Hello, Paige. And Colleen, I see you too. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. And we can hear you. Hello, Janet and Ruth and Pat too. Good to see you all.
Pastor Mike, the top of the screen has the faces halfway blocked because the meeting is being recorded, blocks out the people's faces.
How about if you press the OK? I think that's just a message to you to remind you that it's being recorded.
It worked.
All right, good. So we're still waiting for some folks. It's still 3 minutes too. But for those of you on Zoom and everybody else in the room, you can obviously hear them when they're speaking on Zoom. But when you speak here in the room, they can't hear you very well because the mic is only on my computer. I don't know how to like be the Don, what's his name? The Donahue show guy. See, that's how old I am. Phil Donahue, rather than Oprah, it was like, no, it's now Phil Donahue running around. So. Just a slight what? Yeah. Getting to resemble Phil Donahue more and more. If I shave my beard. Yeah. This is great. I thought we'd all fit in the first 2 rows. So a few more extra people are coming. This is helpful. So very good. Welcome, John and Ryan. If you didn't, hey, John, all right.
Oh, there we go.
Great.
Here, Johnny.
All right.
All right. All right.
Yeah. Very good.
There we go.
I'm feeling like I've got 2 cameras, like I should be looking there, but I keep on wanting to look at up there. So I got to get used to this. All right. Well, it's about 7 o'clock, so I want to welcome you all. I hope that we can spend about an hour together. We may not answer everybody's questions right in this session, but we've got time to answer questions that you have. And but I've got a process that I'd like to outline for you here at the beginning. We'll do a little bit of introductions, especially introducing council members and campaign team members so that you can see them and know who's here, because those are the folks who have been on this process for a long time, and they're folks that want to hear from you and hear your questions and your thoughts and your encouragement. But after the introductions, we want to be sharing information about the Gathering Hall Edition proposal, and then we're going to have a time to raise some clarifying questions, I call them. They might be questions that, well, I don't quite understand this thing. And so you can ask those clarifying questions. We'll take some time for that. And then we will raise any affirmations. So any things that you like about the proposal or the work that we've done. We'll have some time to share some of those affirmations. And then we're going to have a good chunk of time available to share concerns that you might have. And then we'll try to address some of those concerns. again, we might not get to answer all your questions or address all the concerns tonight. But what we're heading towards is a council meeting on June 11th, because the council is trying to discern what they want to propose to the congregation. The council wants to make the best proposal to you all as a congregation that they can, and then to prepare you all as congregation members for the congregational meeting on June 13th. And that congregational meeting will be hybrid as well, so that it will be both people online on Zoom as well as in person will be able to vote and comment and be part of the discussion. So that's where we're heading. So let's do, I've got one logistic thing. I want to remind the people on Zoom just some things. It's great to have you all on Zoom here. When you speak, your voices will come over the whole room. So everybody will be able to hear you in the room very well. But when people in the room speak, you'll only be able to hear them from my microphone on the computer. So I will repeat their questions or comments to you so that you can hear it. I don't have another better way right now to have a microphone that you can hear them on easily. So just so you know that. And I will try to keep track of if you have comments in the chat box, but I think it'd be most helpful if you catch our attention and you speak a question or a concern or an affirmation that you have when we get to it. Does that sound good, everybody on Zoom? All right. So let's do a couple of introductions and then I'll lead us in a prayer. So council members who are here in the room, would you raise your hand and introduce yourselves? So,
Jared Walter.
Lindy Borski Hubbard. Mary Hart.
Can you turn the volume up?
Rich Guard.
All right, and then for you on, and Mark Mugley, okay, great. Here in the room, we have Jared Walter, Lindy Borski Hubbard, Mary Hart, and then Kirk Neubauer, Greg McGowan, Rich Gar, and Mark Mugley. And on Zoom, we have none of the council members are on. Oh,
No.
Paige, there you are.
Hello, everyone.
Great, that's Paige Albjerg. So we got a lot of council members here. You can see this is important to them. They want to hear from you tonight. And now campaign team members, if you've served on the building or the finance and fundraising team or the sanctuary team, if you could also introduce yourself, and let's do inside the room, inside the fellowship hall first, and then we'll come to Zoom. So inside the fellowship hall. And then, yeah, so raise your hand and say your name. Dale Goodman, Brenda Carlson, Mark Mugley, Ruth Caldwell, and anybody else? All right, on Zoom, who served on one of those campaign teams?
Hi, Ryan Torkelson here.
Ryan Torkelson and
Kate Elliott here.
Kate Elliott,
John Knoll.
John Knoll,
Jen Soland.
Jen Soland. All right. I'm really grateful to all of you. These folks, some of them have been working for 5 years on this project and have put in so much time and dedication and wisdom and creativity. They're applauding for you all. Thank you. Elise Skellinger, I see, is just joining us.
What?
She's
Did you say
another council member.
Yeah, we're on here. Mhm.
All right. Yeah, hi, Larry. We can hear you. And Will Bungie is just joining us too. We've just done introductions, Elise and Will, and we've introduced the council members, and I pointed out you, Elise, and we also named the campaign members, sanctuary building and funding and finance team members. And so Wilfred Bungie was on the sanctuary design team as well. So thanks to all of you. Let us have a word of prayer. Gracious God, we give you thanks for all the ways that you bless us through Jesus Christ and your Holy Spirit. We give you thanks for all the ways that you've cared for the people who have gathered to praise your name and care for one another and this world that you so dearly love over all these years. Especially this week, we give you thanks for the Vacation Bible School and the 150 kids and teens and adults who are here every morning, praising you, dancing, and sharing your love with one another and doing service projects for the world. We ask that you would bless us tonight, help us to listen carefully and to share our concerns and our hopes with one another. We pray all this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. So first, I wanted to start off with reminding us of the campaign goals. And so some of you got brochures. I didn't get them to all of you, but if you need a brochure, I'll hand up some more in the back there. Did y'all get these? Great. I'm going to put it up on top too. This brochure that I just handed out is from the beginning of the campaign in 2021, when you did your fundraising work, or some of your fundraising work, not all of it, but some of it. And in the campaign, when you kicked it off, you talked about 4 goals that you had. And one goal was that you needed a space for worship that is accessible and hospitable to people of all ages and abilities. Second, we need a building that reflects our witness and welcome to God's unconditional love for all people, offering ease of access to all parts of our building and creating a wider variety of spaces for congregational and community gatherings. We need, I'm sorry, I thought I had shared my screen. I hadn't done that yet. I've got it up here. Let's see. There. Sorry about that, Zoom folks. So this is from the brochure, and I've been reading from part of the brochure which talks about the goals to accomplish the mission of the congregation. A space for worship and a building that reflects our witness and welcome to God's unconditional love, offering ease of access to all. And we need a building that provides updated and flexible space for spiritual growth and faith formation opportunities for all ages and experience levels. And we need a building that demonstrates our ongoing commitment to serving ministries through the creation of dedicated social ministry space for new community initiatives and partnerships. I want to start there by reminding us of what our overall goals are, because as you crafted this capital campaign, you didn't actually want to only fix what was broken in the building. You saw it as an opportunity for helping this building serve your mission even more vibrantly in this day and age. And so that's what you set out to do, and you commissioned leaders in the congregation to help you figure out how to do that. And you hired the architects, and then eventually last year, we also hired the construction manager in order to help us figure out how to accomplish these goals. Not all of these goals are able to be accomplished all at the same time, is one of the big lessons that we learned in the last 2 years. We had hoped that, boom, we could do it all at once. But we made a decision last year to break this into phases. And so we have not given up on the overall goals, but we're recognizing that we need to do them in phases. And so we said the first thing that we want to do is fix the sanctuary so that we can be back in there without the temporary poles and the cables across. And then we wanted to, the next priority that we had was to do the gathering hall addition. And we did explore other possibilities, but we stuck with going for the gathering hall addition as the second priority for what we wanted to bite off. We also, in addition to thinking about fixing the sanctuary and thinking about the building addition, you also continue to do a lot of fundraising. In the first couple years of this campaign, you raised $3.1 million from among yourselves. And some of that was during the midst of COVID and right after COVID. It is amazing and a sign of the generosity and commitment that this congregation and that many members have. Over 200 households out of 300 and some active congregation members gave to the capital campaign itself. So about, what is that, 70 or 80% gave to the, maybe more like 70%, gave to the capital campaign. So it's a very broad-based campaign. A lot of people said yes by putting some of their money towards this. The gifts range in amount from $10 to over $400,000. And it's been a really generous campaign. And let's remember, some of those smaller donations are just as significant and a stretch as some of the larger donations are. It's not necessarily the size of the donation, but the commitment level is broad across the whole way. So I want to, remind us of the success and the effectiveness of your campaign so far. In the last year, we also did another about maybe 600,000 or a year and a half, another 600,000 has come in pledges and in outright cash donations. So we're up to about $3.8, $3.9 million of donations and pledges. And so again, that has continued to increase over the years. So as you know, we accomplished the stabilization process of the sanctuary. That cost about $900,000, a little more than that. And we've also been paying for some of the indirect costs for the architects and the engineers, both to help us with the sanctuary, as well as with continuing to help us design the Gathering Hall addition. And so the direct construction costs about $900,000. And then I actually don't have, and I don't recall here for you tonight, how much we spent on the indirect costs for the architects and engineers and some of the other costs of the campaign. But overall, we figure that the indirect costs were going to be about $750,000 or so, that when you add all of that up together. The indirect costs also include any of the contingencies for construction. So automatically 5 to 10%, depending on the phase, is in that indirect cost. And the contingencies, if we don't spend it, come back to us. The contingencies we budget in and we promise to pay the contractors and the builders if we make changes in the midst of construction and things like that. That's part of the indirect costs. We'll get more into that when we get to the plans. Now, in phase 2, we have our Gathering Hall addition. And if you want visuals, I've got visuals here. And you can see what the proposed outside is looking like. Oops. Let me see here how I can do this. Oh, I see. There we go. So just a reminder, the architects have worked with the building committee, especially on crafting this proposal. A year and a half ago, we had a proposal that the architects did construction drawings on for the addition and all of the spaces, including all 3 floors of the Gathering Hall, of the education and office wing, and also the rooms above the kitchen and the fellowship hall. And that whole construction package went out for bid, and it came back as $8 million was the total bid for changing everything in the building. And so we went back and we said, this is when we said we got to do the phases. And so then the building team just looked at the phases, and we also tried to shave it down a bit into what we thought would be more of a affordable addition for us. So the building team and the architects, and then partly with the construction manager too, Joseph Construction, started to change some things about the design. So just as an example, the exterior in the original design was all brick. But in this proposed design, you can see that part of it is going to be a siding, which is less expensive than the brick. So that's one of the ways that we tried to make it less expensive for us to put the addition on. Some other things that we did to make the building addition less expensive are actually inside. And let's see if I can find the next one. So some things we had a much more extensive beverage and snack counter over there. We had the beams in the ceiling were at one point, they were going to be wooden. And so exposed wood as beams. And we said, no, we need to, that's a place that we can cut back on expense. And so they're steel and will be painted. We also, in this last round, when it still came back a little bit more than what we could pay for it with the cash that we have on hand, is that instead of the 4 doors into the sanctuary that you see on this drawing, we reduced it to only the 2 central doors. So that saved us about
You can get.
$30,000.
Oh, geez.
Hey, Larry, we can hear you when you're
Oh,
speaking.
okay. Okay, but sorry, it just looks awfully white and, okay, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so I'm just presenting first and then you can raise questions later, but just want to
All
let
right.
we can hear you. So, but what we still have is, remember that we have this vision of being able to come in straight from the parking lot with no stairs from the parking lot. There will be stairs coming up from the sidewalk to the new entryway. And then you'll be able to come in and there's a spot for a possible office right there, or reception by the door. And then you'd come by and there's 3 personal bathrooms right there on the hallway. Those are individual bathrooms with sinks in them, so people will be able to have their own personal space, but they'll also be able to see them right away when they come into the building, and they'll know how to find them easily. And then they'll come around the corner, and if you see right here by the drinking fountain, you can't see it, but there's a door for another bathroom right there. So there are 4 bathrooms right there in the hallway and the gathering hall. And then inside the nursery is another bathroom that's dedicated for the kids and people using the nursery. So the nursery is right there, so that when you come on into the gathering hall, you see the nursery. If you're in the sanctuary and you go, I need to change my baby's diaper, where do I go? Boom, you go out and you see the nursery right across the way. So this is part of the design, is to make it all very able to see where you need to go, literally in some ways. And then the beverage and snack counter there to help us with our fellowship before and after worship services. And then right in the center there is the elevator. The elevator is a big part of this and also a big expense. It touches all 3 floors of the education office wing and the sanctuary and the fellowship hall. So right from here, you can get up to the offices without having to go up the steps. You can use the elevator to go all the way to the 3rd floor of the education building. You know, one of our teen helpers at Vacation Bible School is Anders Lofstun, sorry. And many of you know, he uses a wheelchair, a motorized wheelchair all the time. When he wants to get to other places in the building, he has to go outside and then up the sidewalk and then back out and then back into the office there. The elevator will allow him to be able to go to any of those floors over there as well as here without having to go outside. He's also been somebody who's been part of our youth activities from time to time, but in the early days, he had to be carried up to the 3rd floor where the teens were, or they had to move where they were meeting in order for him to participate. So there's a vision that they want to make this building available and accessible to people of all abilities, like we have already in this congregation. And we already have people that need this, and so we want to do it for them and for people in the future. Great. So that's what our proposal is. Now we're going to shift to talk about the finances. And then after the finances, then we can raise some questions of clarification. And if there's parts of these proposals that you're not quite sure about, we'll raise those and get some more clarity for you all. But Greg McGowan is here, so I'm going to ask him to come forward. And I've got handouts. Pass those around.
Share.
Yep, and then I've got them for you on Zoom too. One moment while I pull it up. Let's see, Zoom share. All right, I think that's good.
Okay.
I'll keep my, just so I have my stuff too.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for all coming. We are, as the council, really appreciative of the turnout tonight and hope that you'll encourage your friends and family members to come to a couple other sessions so that we can hear all your feedback. I'm going to walk you through some of the numbers for this proposal. Everything that Pastor Mike talked about for phase 2, the cost of that is summarized here at the top of it, where we received bids earlier this month. And to do the whole construction process of phase 2, which includes all the gathering hall and the accessibility with the elevator and stuff, comes in about $3,730,000. Part of that, we have to have we talked about the contingency. That's kind of for surprise things that come up during construction. You know, if we have to do a change order, we have that built into the cost. And the architects have suggested a 5%. So $200,000 is added to our cost for that. We also have to pay some fees to Joseph Companies, which is, you know, their construction manager. They're the ones that are managing this project for us, getting all the subcontractors. And so there's a 3.9, almost 4% fee that we pay to them, which is about $156,000. In this phase, it was originally planned to that we would do some work in the sanctuary. That would include, you know, new seating, new sound system, visual equipment, and we've had to take that out. And after the last round of bids came in to get the cost down a little bit, so that is not included in this part of the phase. And then we have some insurance costs and permits and fees that we'll have to pay. So the bid that we got from Joseph Companies was $4,102,000, $840. So that's what our costs are to complete phase 2. We also have a contract with CUNY Architects. We've paid them around $200,000 so far. We have another $65,000 that we still have to pay them. They have done a lot more extra work and redrawing throughout this process. We aren't quite sure what those costs will be, if they will be charging us for that. So I kind of have a question mark there. We might have some extra costs. So for phase 2, we have total anticipated costs of $4,168,000. So that's where we would be at to complete phase 2. The next section here talks about where we're at with our capital campaign and the money that we've been talking about. Pastor Mike mentioned earlier that we raised about $3.9 million. About 3.4 of that has come in already. And that has been from, like he said, a little over 200 people. Some of that is pledged money. Some of it was just unpledged money. People just gave without pledging. So we, as of right now, as of last week, after we paid all of phase 1 costs, which was $900,000, and we've paid the architects, we're down to about $2.3 million left in our account for the capital campaign. We still have outstanding pledges that people are still paying on. That amount is $512,000. We're being conservative and making an assumption that we may not receive all those pledges. People may not, for some various reasons, may not be able to fulfill those. So we've taken 5% off of that number just to be conservative. So we're saying we're going to hopefully receive another $486,000. The $2.3 million that we have there, that's in quite a bit of that is in a money market. And then we have another 1.5 million that is in CDs earning interest at 5%. So we'll be getting interest income here over the next 6 months of about $48,000. And then we also have had this bequest. It was part of the Nesty bequest, and then another bequest before that. That we had a committee put together, and they chose to put part of that bequest towards the building project, but we don't really know exactly. They didn't specify what it was going to be used for, but we have that available for our use for phase 2. So we have available for phase 2, $3,015,000. You can see there with the cost of 4.1 and cash of 3, we're a little short, about $1,152,000. Also in this phase is some geothermal and solar items in for the addition. There's geothermal wells and then the HVAC system. And there are costs associated with that through the Inflation Reduction Act that came out this year, we can get some credits back, rebates. And based on what the architects have told us of costs and what the rebate structure is, they're thinking we might get about $200,000 back from the government. Now we will have to pay that upfront to the contractors, and there'll be a application process that takes several months to get approved from the government, and then they will issue us our rebate checks. So we will have to pay that money, and then we'll get it back, 6 to 9 months after completion of the contract of the construction. And then we have a $600,000 loan. That is right now a long-term loan that the finance committee has, they've looked at the finances and the situations and interest rates that we have available to us. And that is what they're recommending for a long-term loan at this point. And they felt comfortable that we can maintain that, make those loan payments, and also maintain the ministries that we have currently here at First Lutheran and stay within our budget. But that's just a recommendation from them. So we're still short about $350,000 from to get phase 2 complete. So you might wonder, how are we going to get there? Well, this is where you all come in. And that's what we want feedback on. So possible ways to get there is we do more fundraising. There are, like Pastor Mike said, we have about 200 people that have given towards this project. We have about 300 active giving units that families that give to our operating budget. So there is some room there that we could reach out to folks and encourage them to pledge, or give or people that haven't given anything yet to give. We can also encourage people to extend their pledges. Originally, it was a 3-year pledge that we initiated, and this last winter, we did ask people if they would be willing to extend another year. Some did. So that is in our numbers, but we will continue to ask for more of that. We could take out a larger loan, and we could go up to $1 million if we needed to. We were approved for that. But that might require some other cuts that we have to do in order to make those loan payments, other things to our budget might have to be cut. And so those are discussions that we need to have. Or we look at reducing the scope of the project. Do we make the space a little smaller? Is there anything else to cut out? The building team has, over the last few months when they've been working, they've kind of cut what they can based on the size and the of the project. There's not much else that they feel that they can cut out. From what my involvement with hearing with Joseph companies, they've really tried to help us keep the cost down, trying to find the right subcontractors that can help us get the project complete. So there's a downside to this is that would kind of put the project on pause for a little while, because we'll have to kind of go back, regroup, reprioritize some of those goals that we had, and go back to the architects to have them possibly redraw some plans and also then rebid it. So those are 3 options that we have come up with. The next page on the back of what you have, the folks in the room here talks about our loan. We haven't had a loan here at First Lutheran for, I think, a very long time, as far as I know. And just kind of wanted to give you some updates of what is this loan going to look like, where are we getting it from, that type of thing. We're getting it through the ELCA Mission Investment Fund. That is an arm of the ELCA. They basically get money from investors to invest their money, and they take those investments and loan them out to church congregations for building projects and other types of things. We are currently approved for 1.2 million, excuse me. They are willing to go up to 1.5 if we need to. We can lock in our interest rates for either 3, 5, or 7 years. And so at each of those time, if it's the 3-year, we would look at the rates again and lock in a new rate. So there's a risk that the rates could go up or they could go down. So that's something that we have to look at the risks with that. Right now, the rates are ranging from 7 to 7.5%. And that is currently below prime interest rates. I have talked with banks and said that we probably can't get any better than that around here. During construction phase, we will borrow the funds as we need them, just kind of like a line of credit. And then we will only make interest payments on those during that construction phase. Once the construction is complete, whatever we have for an outstanding balance will be turned into that long-term note, and then we'll start making monthly payments. Other arrangement, we only pay closing costs once. There's no appraisal needed. The loan is set up for a 25-year payback. We can pay back early if necessary, and there's no prepayment penalties. And then the loan will be secured by the church property. Talking about the 25 years, throughout this whole process with the fundraising, council discussions, it was always thought that we take out a loan, that we would probably do some sort of fundraising, in the near future to help pay down that debt. So we'd have a debt reduction fundraising, within a few years. Finance would hope that we could pay this loan off in the next 5 to 10 years. The next little section is, what would a loan payment look like with these numbers, just to kind of give you an idea. So if we did the $600,000 loan that we were talking about, the monthly payment's $4,300. So not too bad. Annual payment of $51,000. So our giving would have to increase by 7% in order to make those loan payments. And that means that we could if we kept all of our other spending flat, we would still need to increase our budget by giving by 7% to make this work. And we also have to think about other costs aren't going to stay flat. Insurance is going to go up, utilities will go up. We need to continue to compensate our employees. So that 7% is probably more like a 10% is going to be necessary to make those loan payments work. Another number of $800,000, because we will have to borrow the money for the rebate. A small increase of $5,700, $68,000 for the year, a little over 9% increase giving. If we had to take out a full $1 million loan, it's $7,200 a month, which is an annual payment of $86,000. And our giving would have to increase almost 12%. And that is keeping everything flat. So that's where that other scenario is. If we increase the loan by that much, something else has to give, most likely. Because we can get, giving can increase that much, but it takes all of us to do that. A couple of notes there. In 2023, our giving increased by 55,000 or 8%, 8.6. And this year we're budgeting a 6.5% increase in our giving, which we are actually exceeding at this time. And then at the bottom, I just kind of break down of how our costs are, how we spend our money in our budget. We have a budget of $756,000 annually. And that's how our money is all spent, all the way from payroll at a little over $500,000, about a little over 2/3 of our budget, all the way down to, witness and welcome, about $6,000. As you'll see, those last four line items, that's our programming costs that support the ministries of this church. And there's not a lot there to cut, unfortunately. So, the big area is it's payroll or benevolence. And so those are conversations that as a congregation we need to have, as we've been a very giving congregation over the years. And if that's something we want to continue, then we have to think about how that impacts our decisions with this loan and this building project. And that's all I have on that for now. Pastor Mike, I don't know how you want to go forward.
So now is the phase for asking any of your clarifying questions. So if there's something that I said or that you've read in one of our reports that's gone out or that Greg has reported and you have a question about it, a clarifying question, let's raise some of those first so that we have as much understanding of the proposal as possible. So how about if I'm going to leave the cost and capital campaign summary up on the screen because that's also what the folks on Zoom can see. But any clarifying questions? Uwe, first of all.
Yes, the geothermal and the solar, those costs are included in the basic cost here of the 4 million, right?
Yes, so I'm going to repeat questions and comments in the room to people on Zoom. So Uwe asked, are the geothermal and solar costs included in the construction bid package, that 3.7 million? Yes, and they are included, but I'm going to specify it. Remember that the geothermal that's in this construction bid is only for the addition. We had asked them to give us bids for doing extra wells in the parking lot so that the whole building eventually would be able to be on geothermal. But those extra wells are not included in the base bid, only the wells for the addition. And the solar costs that are in here are only for removing the existing solar panels during the construction and then putting them back on. There is no expansion of our current solar array in this basic bid.
But to follow up, if I may, is it possible then to later, at another date, add that, the solar or geothermal?
Yes, so Uwe asked, can we add those things later? Yes, so we could add the geothermal wells under the parking lot at a later time, and we could expand the solar panels on the roof at a later time too. It's not prohibited. Helen had a clarifying question.
Just wondering, this does not include any furnishings or audio visual. Is there any estimate as to what those would be? Just some concerns about having a space and nothing there.
Yeah. So Helen's wondering about the absence of furnishings in the gathering hall. It does include the toilets and sinks and things like that. That somebody asked me, like, do we only get the plumbing or do we get the utensils to use it too? But no, yes, we do get that. But so instead of having monitors on the walls that would be able to show what's happening in the sanctuary, we won't be able to do that. And the tables and chairs that we would have in the gathering hall, we'd use what we have right here. So we just put some of those upstairs in the gathering hall, like our plastic tables or round tables that we have right now, we'd use there, and we just wouldn't get any new ones. I don't have an estimate of how much those things cost.
And it
John?
will include the furnishings in the sanctuary, any changes in the sanctuary.
Correct.
Just the doors.
And John was asking, that means correct that it does not include new furnishings or AV or sound in the sanctuary, and that's correct too, because part of this proposal is that we shift what we had planned on using for finishing the sanctuary, that we would shift that to paying for the addition. The big chunk of costs for the sanctuary stuff, we figured that it could be $50,000 to $70,000 for new seating. And there's also a new floor that needs to be done in the sanctuary. And then smaller costs for new live stream cameras that could be automatically operated, as well as some new speakers and sound that would integrate with all of that. And that we were hoping would all fit within $100,000 for the sanctuary. But that does not include the new flooring. Let me see, before we go to another question here in the fellowship hall, I see a question with Pat Seeker, a clarifying question from Pat.
Yes, I was wondering, in the drawing that showed the elevator, it only looked like one narrow door, not much bigger than what we have now, but maybe that's the perspective of the building. But I realize you don't have to move a casket up and down anymore because it will be on a level floor, but just one width on the elevator, is that enough?
I'm going to ask Dale Goodman to respond, if you would, about the size of the elevator. Do you have a sense? You were looking at I'm putting you on the spot, but you are one of those people looking.
The elevator any more than just the 5 stops.
Okay.
Not the 5.
All right. He doesn't know exactly the size of it, but the elevator is large enough so that an emergency gurney
Yes.
could go in there. It wouldn't be flat out. But if somebody, you know, on the third floor broke their leg and needed to be on a gurney, the EMT would be able to come on in, bring the gurney up, get them on it and be able to lower them down. But like you said, it's not big enough and it's not necessary for a casket size.
The gurney was a question. Yeah.
I can look that up, or one of our building team members can actually look up the dimensions at a later time.
Okay.
That meet code, which was the ADA code.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. Dale said it for sure. Well, he said, I assume that it meets ADA code. And yes, that would be, I'm almost certain of that. Back here in the fellowship hall, I saw Peter had a clarifying question.
Since there are no funds for sanctuary furnishings, are the pews going to stay then for the time being?
Right, our plan would be to leave the pews and the temporary chairs where they are. Uwe?
It looks to me like this plan has a 10-year horizon. So if we get this basic thing, maybe this is not a correct or question about question. It is a 10-year horizon so that we can look at funding other stuff later.
Yeah, so Uwe was asking about the funding horizons and what this is looking at. Greg, do you want to? I have an idea about how to clarify. So if it's $600,000 or $1 million loan, I think we can project out, we can take the loan for the full 25 years. And so it can be spread that way. But our finance team and many of us want to have that be paid off much sooner than that. And so I think that, and we don't have exact plans on this, so this is some prognostication, is that we can, if we're doing the building this fall, like we did with the sanctuary, we made an appeal to people. If you want to help us, here's a good time to give another donation. We can also do that this fall. I think that it's not going to, you know, get us $600,000 in a fall fundraising campaign, but it could get us some. Then what I see is that maybe in 2 or 3 years, that then we can tackle more of paying down that debt, and we could get to paying off a big chunk of it in a campaign at that time. But for this middle distance of 2025, 2026, and 2027, we're going to have most of those loan payments, those monthly or annual loan payments due. So that's how I see it. Yeah, so that's my clarifying response to you, if that's all right. Any clarifying questions on Zoom that I didn't see? Let me just make sure that you guys feel good. I can't always see your faces the way that we've got it here, so speak up or raise your hand like Pat did. All right. How about if we shift, did you have a clarifying question? One more.
And then you referred to a $750,000 figure, which I thought was like management fees and stuff like that. And I assume that 750,000 is for everything, not just for phase 1. Is that accurate?
Yes.
That's important.
Yes. So like, so Jim Martin Schramm was asking about the 750,000 of indirect costs that I referred to earlier. That number is for the whole campaign, not only for the addition and not only for the sanctuary. And I think that's something helpful for us to remember too, is that our campaign is for everything that we want to accomplish. So our gifts to the campaign have already helped us do the sanctuary work. And our gifts that are to come are also, in a sense, helping us pay off the sanctuary. Because you can think about, if we have a $5 million project, that's what we're looking at right now, and we spent $1 million plus on the sanctuary, that's about 20% that we've been spending on the sanctuary. So one way to think about that loan is that 20% of the loan is also kind of going to help us with the sanctuary as well. That's one way to look at it. Okay, clarifying questions?
How long is the bid good?
Good question. We got an extension with the subcontractors so that they're holding their bids until June 17th. They were only until June 10th originally, I think it was, and we asked them to give us another week. And so it's out to June 17th. So if we don't make a congregational decision by then, the bids are released. It doesn't mean that we have to have said no to the project. It just means we'll have to go back to them at a later time this summer or this fall and say, yeah, we want your bids back again. And they might change their bids by the time they come out. How about Jim was up and then John? Okay.
So, phase one was the sanctuary, phase two is the gathering space and the accessibility piece. Is there another phase?
Well, we do still have goals and a long-term vision of doing the education and office wing so that that can be more usable for small group and large group gatherings, and upgrading the bathrooms on the second and third floors as well.
That kind of relates to the question, which is one of the goals had to do with social ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And what I see so far doesn't articulate anything specific about
Mm-hmm.
social ministry. So is it safe to say that that goal would be addressed in a subsequent phase?
I think so, or addressed perhaps differently. The idea was that we would need new space for social ministries to be here. And so one iteration was that we were going to have a basement underneath the gathering hall. And that was going to be the dedicated space for a new social ministry that we would incubate here. But it could be that in the addition and the reconfiguration, that a new social ministry can still be incubated within our existing space. Or that maybe the new social ministry that we incubate doesn't need a lot of on-site space. Maybe they need an office, but all of their work is being done all throughout the county rather than all right here. So I think we still have that vision that we want to incubate and raise up new service and justice ministries for our region, but it may not need new space here. There's no dedicated space for it. And John, and then.
Are there any contingencies on the geothermal and the solar? If we're not able to do the projected space
Mm-hmm.
and have to go back and do another plan,
Mm-hmm.
is the geothermal going to be included in that, geothermal and solar?
If we don't, John is wondering if we don't do the gathering hall edition, what are the contingencies for geothermal and solar to be incorporated? Those could still be incorporated into our existing building. We don't need the addition in order to do the geothermal. It may impact how much more you can expand the solar, because the solar expansion took advantage of the new roof that we had. So you might not get as much or a different configuration of solar. Thank you, Greg. It's already 10:02. So let's share. I think it's important to share some affirmations. So think for a moment about one or two of the aspects of this proposal that you are glad for, that you say, oh, this is something that makes me happy or that makes me excited. And let's share a few of those. Popcorn, we may not get to all of those, but I always like, before we start getting to raising concerns, to also recognizing what things we appreciate about the proposal that's before us. So how about to give some people online a first chance? So Pat, would you like to share an affirmation or appreciation? Oh, you're muted, I'm sorry. Thank you for being muted though.
I really appreciate the way the bathrooms were designed, that they are just no gender. They're not specific. They can just be used with privacy. And I I think that that was a beautiful design, and I appreciate all the handicapped accessible adaptations that have been made.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Anybody else on Zoom that would like to share an appreciation?
Yes, I would. I like the whole basic concept of a gathering space. Yeah, it seems like the attendance is diminished. It hasn't picked up, but it doesn't seem like since COVID. And that's certainly one of the things I appreciate is the socialization that happens in addition to the worship. The opportunity to get to just talk with other members of the congregation and having a place that's will be hard to miss. You know, if people leaving, they say, "Oh, yeah, this is where everyone's still kind of hanging around until we've had a chance to get a cup of coffee, some treats, and a chance to talk with one another." And I think that is a very important part of our congregation to have that weekly gathering. And I think hopefully the gathering place will facilitate that actually happening.
Thank you, John. Another affirmation from the Zoom crew? Oh, one second. Sorry, Ingrid. Judy is giving a thumbs up. Do you want to speak, Judy?
No, I was just giving a thumbs up to what John said and what Pat said. I agree with both of those, and the accessibility factor. I think that was really important. So I was just giving thumbs up to both of those.
Great. I was at first thinking, who's that Judy? Until I heard your voice. All right.
Me.
Great.
I would like to say that I think the best thing about the addition is that it is accessible. You think about people that have disabilities, but also we do have an aging congregation. We do have a lot of young families, but we do have members who in the future may have limitations getting into the building. So it's not just thinking about generations to come, it's also thinking about the people that are actually still using the building right now. And I think that it's a long-term vision to accommodate current and future members.
All right. Thank you. Let's hear some affirmations from inside the fellowship hall. Ben. Oh, Joe, sorry. See, I didn't recognize my wife either, so.
I really appreciate that the comprehensive plan, this whole thing preserves the original historic structure and adds a real modern wow space. And the two, I think the two can play just fine together. I've seen it done in other churches, and so it's great that we get to have both.
So Joe said that he likes that, maintains the historic structure and adds a wow structure as well, a modern structure to it. How about Greg?
I like the entrance from the gathering place into the sanctuary. That's going under the stained glass windows. It's a neat concept.
Greg appreciates being able to come from the gathering hall into the sanctuary underneath the stained glass windows. Jim.
The work on the sanctuary is really confidence inspiring. It was a very difficult job, and they did it beautifully. And you would hardly know that we had all those little columns and cables. So it's, so the firm that you've hired is excellent as far as I can tell. So that's, for me, whatever we do going forward, I'm pleased we have the contractor that
Jim Martin Schrem said that the work that the construction managers and the contractors did on the sanctuary is confidence building, and he's really pleased that they would be the ones working on this project. Oh yeah, Ingrid, yeah, come back to Ingrid. Sorry, thank you, Greg.
That are all over in Minnesota, and I'm sure there's many in Iowa that I didn't know, and I didn't. And I was impressed by the one lady that said that she was very disappointed that they removed the Gausta painting from the front of the sanctuary and put it in another place and put something else there, and she was very unhappy. And that just impressed me because I thought we could have very well have done that. And, I think it's just important that it remains.
Mm.
And if there's other ways that other people want to be more welcome, they can do it with other means.
Mhm. Ingrid said that she appreciates that the Gausta painting of the Jesus as the Good Shepherd is still there, and that she says we can be also welcoming in other ways too. Let's see. How about if we may, can I ask you, is it okay if we go for another 15 minutes or so? Because I want to get to raising some of the concerns that you might have and addressing those. One thing that I'd like to do is have you think, you probably have been thinking about those concerns. Yeah, you can hand those up. But if you want to write down some of your concerns on paper that you want to share with me and the council, if you don't get to speak them all out loud, so you can kind of share some feedback that you have, and we'll try to address the concerns in upcoming communications if we don't address all the concerns tonight. So same way on Zoom, if you think about some of the concerns that you might have about this proposal, if you would jot them down on an email or a piece of paper and then share them with me that I can share with the council, that will help us too. So take a moment.
Pastor Mike?
Oh, yes,
This is
Larry.
Larry. Larry made a statement early on that he shouldn't have made. I know that we don't have enough money apparently to use wood in the new gathering area.
Mhm.
So it needs to go the way it is, and it won't be ugly. It'll look great. I'm sorry about that. And just bringing this all together, adding the gathering space and the way the sanctuary turned out, Diane and I are very happy with what's happening. So, I should be careful what I say.
Well, thank you, Larry.
Yeah.
We heard the affirmation for sure, and all. And yeah, thank you for your comments. So how about if we start this time in the fellowship hall with asking a few people to share some of your concerns. And when we get to addressing them, I'm gonna maybe refer to other building team members or other folks that may be able to address them more than me. Some of your concerns may be concerns that we have to do some thinking about before we can address it. So we may have to say, oh, we're going to take that concern and work on it. So we might not be able to address it right now and give you a change or a different response. But at least we want to collect some of those concerns now. So what concerns do you have that you want to raise about the proposal? Ron.
I just have a concern. I've been involved in these before, and it just needs to be brought forward, I think, where 300 people vote yes, do this, but 100 people are willing to donate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if we like it and we want to vote for it yes, we need to be prepared. That's a big loan.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think we need to kind of sell that idea that you need to more than vote for it. You need to participate in it.
Yeah, so I'm going to repeat just so everybody on Zoom can hear. Ron said that we should think about that if we vote for this, it's not just a vote, but it's a commitment towards the funding of it. And that's our personal commitment to that funding too. Yeah, did I summarize it pretty well? Uwe, a concern?
Well, maybe it's not a concern. Well, I think compromise is important. That seems to me we're compromising on what we're willing to do in this first and the second phase. Maybe compromising on the obviously can't compromise on additional fundraising is one thing, but I'm wondering if it's possible, if it's been considered at all, that you issue loans to certain members of the congregation who have money in the bank that's currently not earning as much interest. If it earned half of what the interest charged there, is that something that would ever be possible? I have no idea.
All right. So Uwe wondered if it would be possible to have to get loans from private individuals in the congregation, and that we would have those loans at a lower interest rate than the Mission Investment Fund. Greg, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, that is definitely an option. That's not anything that we have ever considered before. That's a whole different, I guess, taking things to a whole nother level of borrowing from our congregation members. So that's something that we'd have to really think about. I'm not saying yes or no. It's not something that we've had any discussions about at all. But it is a concept to consider.
I know that the Oneota Co-op did. They borrowed from the members.
Yeah. John Hart said here in the room that the Oneota Co-op did an expansion by having loans from their members. So, other concerns? What's that?
Years ago, it was done here also. And what I remember was, our meager funds, maybe it was $500, but when it came for 3 years or whatever, you just, forgot it. That's what it was. So that helps.
Yeah. Linda Swenson remembers a time here a while ago in the congregation when there was a loan program like that with members, and that it was a certain number of years, and that many members at the end of that term just forgave the loan outright as a donation. So that's one way. Other concerns here in the room that you want to raise? Before we get to you, I'm going to go to the Zoom. And John, you already asked one, or you didn't raise a concern yet. What's your concern?
My concern is that, I would hate to see bricks and mortar put us into a pinch where we can't continue the programs that we do. And, every year when you do your annual fund and your annual budget, I'd hate to see it cut off our, our other programs that are so good.
So John Hart said that a concern that he has is that the loan payments would constrict what we could do in our annual ministries. And I pulled up that annual budget right there, because that's kind of what you were talking about, that if we aren't able to raise more funds on our annual basis to pay those loan payments, it will require us to make changes in our current budget. Is there any response to that anybody wants to make, especially a council member? How about a council member or a campaign team member who's been thinking about it?
Neither one of those, but I'll second.
Okay, so Mark also has a concern about that if we take out too big of a loan, that it's going to impinge on our annual ministries. I think that I'll make a response then. I think that is a real concern. I think that part of a response would be that we do have really dedicated finance team and a good budgeting process, so that with our staff and our teams and our council and our finance team, we can wrestle with what's before us and try to be very creative and faithful and wise in creating the budget for going forward. I think though, like I said earlier, that the biggest crunch years are going to be 2025, 2026, and 2027. Because if we had a natural growth, yeah, you see that 8.6% in 1 year growth and a 6.5% the next year in growth. If we kept that upward trajectory, after 3 years, we'd be about there. The two lines would kind of meet. But it's these 3 years right now when it's going to be the most difficult for us to have an increase in giving and keep track with these additional expenses. So that it's gonna, so if we pass this, you really need to help and support your finance team and your council, because they'll have to really make some important and careful decisions in order to make it all meet. I think it's important for us to make wise and deliberate decisions with the funds that we have on hand and what we project over the short term. I also think that there are things that can happen in both ways that can be surprising. And some of that can be surprising generosity or surprising like new mission that we didn't realize that we could do for a very little cost. Or, so there are things that we can be very creative about doing with what we have on hand. And there are things that we need to be very careful about in making sure that we're planning for, oh, what if there is a 2008 downturn in the economy again, which would be a downturn in some of our giving in a year or two after that. So we have to, recognize that there's positives in the future and there's some negatives to be. But you have a track record in this congregation of being generous and bold and creative. I mean, look at this congregation's history, and you can do it again. You've done it for 100 and some years, so you can do it. I want to see if there's concerns raised in the Zoom room. Pat Seeker.
I guess you can hear me.
Yep.
My question is, there was no money allotted to audio visual. And the only concern I have about that is this goes along with Paige saying that a portion of our congregation is aging. And I know of at least 4 different times that somebody sitting beside me or near me said, I didn't hear any of that. And I'm concerned about the people that have hearing disabilities, that we address that.
Mm-hmm. Good. I've been thinking about that too. It's possible that we could make some modifications that aren't that expensive and that could fit within an annual budget to improve some of the sound quality in the sanctuary. Some of it is that there's some dead spots, even though we've got a very vibrant room upstairs in the sanctuary for spoken word. When we have to use the microphones, some of the microphones and the way the speakers are arranged right now don't get where everybody's sitting. So it's possible for us to do a few maybe smaller changes that might address that. And since we've gotten back into the sanctuary, we are having to make adjustments every Sunday because we're not quite sure where to hit everybody's vocal range. Like me and Pastor David and other speakers in the sanctuary. So there, I want to, before we go to more here, anybody else on Zoom have a concern they want to raise? Okay, I don't see anybody or hear anybody on Zoom. So I'm coming back here and we'll go to Karen and then Uwe.
I'd like to hear sanctuary committee, what do they wish we could have done that we don't have in the, I think our sanctuary is beautiful, but there's things that I was hoping we could have fixed. That now it sounds like there's no money for that.
Yeah. So Karen raised the question, could we hear from somebody on the sanctuary design team about what things that we're not able to do or that this proposal means we'd have to put off for a while? So I'm going to ask Mark Mugley, who is the chair of that, if you would respond.
Well, the sanctuary design team just articulated some principles and they were fairly general, but one was we would have an upgraded and first-class sound system. Number 2, that we would have an upgraded and first-class lighting system. Number 3, that there would be audio-visual capabilities if the zooming of services continues. There was also the intention to have a new floor covering. And there was the plan to have completely flexible seating. And there was the intention that there would be repainting. Those weren't put in exactly a priority order, but I think everyone understood that sound and lighting were absolute essentials.
Mm-hmm.
And that flooring would be a natural extension of having a gathering space with a matching floor. And the flexible seating was part of the large compromise about the retaining of the historic fixtures of the altar, the pulpit, etc.
I think Mark spoke very clearly. For me, I'm wondering if you on Zoom were able to hear him or if I need to repeat. I see nods from you on Zoom that you could hear Mark. Okay, good. All right. It's 15, or no, that clock is a little, it's only 8:11. So I think we have 4 more minutes. So Uwe, what was your concern?
We talked about sound, and I've heard several people mention that we don't, and dead spots, we don't have a bell anymore, and some of the members really mentioned that was something that's another 50,000. But can we compromise on the entrance ramp? In other words, can they build an entrance ramp without the roof and all that, and have the entrance there, maybe with the bathrooms and the elevators? Is that something to cut the costs, compromise on the cost?
Okay, let me try to repeat what I heard you say, especially for the Zoom folks. And then if I didn't quite get what you're doing. First of all, he said, Uwe said, well, and there is the bell that some of us wish that we could get fixed up in the steeple. And then the other thing that you mentioned was, have we thought about having a smaller or way to get from the parking lot into the sanctuary without having the huge addition? Is that?
But built so that later we can do that.
Oh, but built so that we could still add the addition later.
Yeah.
Good question. And yes, for a good long time, especially last summer, the building team looked at that possibility and looked at 2 drafts of having only an elevator with the small vestibule right out here. So you would have the elevator going to all of the floors, and then that people would come in through an entrance to the education and office wing through where the kitchenette is right now. So that would be the entrance into the building from the parking lot. There'd be just a little bit of a change there, but we think it'd still be rampable. And then you'd be on the floor and then come in and then take the elevator up the half floor to the sanctuary level or to the other levels.
Without spending too much money for later on. In other words, this would be part integrated into what in the future could happen.
Yes, and so that was part of the idea, is that you put the elevator where it is planned for the big addition and the whole vision plan that we have for the building. And so you can add the addition later, and that you'd modify the education office wing. So we did look at that. And even with that, the building team thought there were more unsatisfactory aspects to that design than going forward with the addition. That we get more with the addition and we'd sacrifice too much with that reduced plan. But here's another response, is that if we don't do this addition, then and accept these bids, we have a couple of options. One is to just give us more time to think and to figure out what to do with that big financing cost. And maybe go back to the bidders for this proposed addition a little bit later on this summer or fall, and just take a little bit of time. But the other option is to go back and ask the architects to reconfigure and say, these are our 4 goals again. Go all the way back to the drawing board. And that means they might have to give up an addition like this. They might have to do something that they had not conceived of yet. But this building team and these architects have been working for 5 years and looking at all these permutations. But that's a possibility, though, that we could say, you guys go all the way back to the drawing board, reconfigure this whole thing. And it might end up that you would have an elevator, I don't know, going through the kitchenette area rather than going through, I don't know. You know, it could be very different. But they've worked a really long time, and this is the plan. And that's where the elevator keeps on coming up and going because of the way these buildings all meet together right there. So that's my response to that. Let's see. I would like to, how about this? If you do have other concerns that you want our teams and the council to be addressing, put them down either in paper here or in an email. And you can also email me and I'll share it with the council and the teams later on. What we want to do, just to remind us of the process, is that the council is coming to that meeting on June 11th, and they want to have heard from a lot of you all about your ideas, your affirmations, and your concerns, because they know that they have more details and more time to work on these details than 150 people in a congregational meeting. So they want to craft the best proposal to bring forward to the whole congregation. And having these listening sessions is one of those things. So please raise your concerns and your affirmations again, and talk to the different council members, or to me, or Pastor David, or to Adrian. Adrian and Jill Marquardt are taking the evening off because they're on all week, and they'll be back here early tomorrow morning. And Pastor David is with his family tonight, so they'll come to other listening sessions. But you can also talk to either one of them or me as staff members on this. I think I have covered. I kept track of some of my notes, and I think I've covered everything that I wanted to make sure that I shared with you. I really appreciate all your turnout, both on Zoom as well as here in the room. This is a really good turnout tonight, and you're helping us make a really prayerful and wise decision as we go forward. So thank you very much. Let's close in prayer. Please pray with me. Gracious and loving God, thank you for sending your Holy Spirit to be with us tonight and every moment of our lives. We give you thanks for the creativity, the faithfulness, and the compassion and care that people have had in this meeting tonight. We ask that you would continue to guide and inspire our team members and council members so that as we go through these next 3 weeks, that we may continue to be filled with your listening spirit. We pray all these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Thank you all. And thank you especially to folks on Zoom. I'm going to close the Zoom meeting. I would long to talk to each one of you individually, like we'll probably do a little bit of after meeting chat here. But I'm going to sign off and end this meeting. Thank you for being with us.